Hello and yay to another new episode of Shittywebcomics Weekly. This one we're gonna just pre-record a week in advance because I've had like the links to this one written down for a month or something. And I, in fact, since this time, fucking the author of this first comic blocked me, George Alexopoulos. I used to just have the link to his Twitter, and so I go there, and it's like, oh, that's right, he blocked me, so I can't even look at it. But fortunately, I could open the original
Yeah,
image
I don't
file.
know why. I still don't know why he blocked you, except for the fact that he blocked Kay.
Yeah, he blocked Kay because he did something where it was like, oh, I can't be part of, less than 10K
It
artists
was the
because I have
gayest
more than
thing ever, and it's a
10K.
giant red flag. It was some kind of fucking Twitter artist fucking typical pity party bullshit.
Well, that's exactly what it was. Is there's a hashtag on Twitter for like below 10K artists, and George was like, oh, like, he did a comic where he was moping about how he couldn't be part of the hashtag because he had more than 10K followers, and this was also like just before he got on Tim Pool and that kind of stuff before he blew up some more, which was probably going to happen sooner or later. Um, but
Impool, who was also a retard.
yeah, um, the, so from about a month ish ago, and by that I mean the end of May, fucking early June, something like that. I think around May actually. George did this comic where wine mom is sipping wine and a kid comes out. It's like, oh, where are my brothers and sisters? And he says, there are seven of us. I see them at bedtime. They want me to tell you the names, like some kind of horror story about women who had abortions. And it's like, I'm not even sure George gives that much of a shit about abortion. But it's funny because it's yet another George Alexopoulos
It's
comic
the
where,
exact same. It's his stock fucking go-to fucking method
yeah,
for
that
making
well,
comics.
a lot of people do this where their fourth panel is facial expression, crazy facial expression, and it's kind of something he does. It's something that a lot of comic creators do, and it does work. We've gone over this in shit in the old shitty webcomics days years ago, where some people would just rely on a facial expression, but sometimes it worked perfectly. Sometimes, if it's a funny expression, usually in these George comics, it's just creepy and weird. It's kind of off putting, which can have its own appeal, I guess. In fact, the comics that he really got famous for recently in the past few months were the ones about Joe Biden, where Joe is like just a creepy, weird monster creature that sucks the blackness out of black people or something because they didn't vote for him or whatever the fuck. Um,
Because they're not black because they didn't vote for him.
yes. But anyways, apparently, Breadpanes, which is the lefty answer to Stone Toss, did a comic here in May
It's the
20.
watered down, unnecessary version of Stone Toss.
Well, it's also Stone Toss where he doesn't really know how to fucking make a punchline, but we'll get into that. But this comic is just called George, and it's like, you believe bad thing, and guy in secret MAGA hat, like he can't actually draw a MAGA hat because that would be, too
That would be
telling.
triggering. People would be spasming so hard they break their own backs.
Yes, if yeah, people saw a MAGA hat, they would just be pissed off. In general, regardless. Um, but the guy goes, actually, I believe good thing, and then, uh, you know, panel of silence, and then it's panel four, and I must scream, just making fun of specifically George's doing of this, but then somebody else replies saying, "You guys are all the same." Tibh. With another Breadpanes comic actually doing the fourth panel yelling. It's like, you're a communist? Communist kill the people. Let me guess that's not real communism. And then communist says, capitalism kills 100 million every 5 years. And last panel is fucking Gadsden flag shirt guy saying that's corporatism, not capitalism, which isn't a joke, isn't even really a good
Not
point.
a joke, nor is it even a fucking argument or an idea or anything.
Yeah,
It's like capitalism is literally just a method of fucking it's a system of paying people for their fucking goods and services.
yeah, that's all it is. It's like saying
And
that
how the
fucking
fuck does that kill 100 million
yeah.
people every
The
5 years?
basis for
It
that
doesn't
is
explain it.
statistics that are not presented and also are obviously false. Somebody posts them in reply to the comic because, as usual, people are going to be like, yeah, capitalism doesn't kill anyone. In the same way that communism itself doesn't kill anyone, it's the practitioners of communism that actually engage in mass murder in order to attempt to enforce and maintain communism. Like the way that um, feminism always devolves into lying about rape. Communism always devolves into mass murders and graves and fucking,
It is because of communism.
silencing people and
It's the
imprisoning people for
ideals of
dissent.
communism.
Um,
It's meant to back up that whole belief
yeah.
system.
And the thing is, capitalism doesn't do that. First of all, because it doesn't need to, but second of all, because
Ideal.
capitalism isn't like an a fucking conscious choice. It's a
Yeah, it's not a
natural
mindset.
default state.
It's not a fucking ideology. It's not any of those things.
Yeah,
And it goes to
capitalism
show how
tends
many
to be,
people just
and there's a
how
lot
many
of
people
fucking
the most
arguments.
common
People could
thing
go
whenever
back and forth
somebody
for
brings
a
up
million years
capitalism
about how
as like
fucking
a fucking
capitalism
mindset
is
or
actually
an
this or
idea
not.
or anything like that, it's like it sounds like you don't know what capitalism is, and then they go and they prove it by
Yeah,
usually saying capitalism has killed millions of people. How does
and again,
buying and
none of
selling
this is
things
relevant or
kill
matters
millions of
for even
people?
1 second. The whole argument of what is actually capitalism, I don't care. I don't really give a shit. It's not relevant. It's not important. And of course, a dumb little webcomic, especially like this, isn't even going to come close to having the answers. But doing it in a way that makes
It
sense,
goes
and
to
then of
show how
course
many people
has
believe
a
that.
punchline and is funny at the end doesn't fucking matter either. That's not going to happen. You can't really do that because
I mean, on
nobody
top of
knows
the fact
how.
that so many people a lot of liberals still seem to think that their one big problem is that they just haven't gotten the word out. People just don't understand yet. It's kind of like with women. It's like people just don't understand not to hit your wife. People don't understand not to rape. It's
Yeah,
like who
fucking
needs to be told not to rape?
remember what the ad said. No raping.
Remember what the
What?
advert said on the telly? That's
What?
what? And he's rolling down his ski mask.
Yes.
What?
What? Remember, no raping. Oh.
Raper,
What?
no raping.
Yeah, that's the thing about first of all, communism. The whole argument for that has already been over. It's lost,
Yeah,
essentially.
they lost
But
the
in
plot, but the
practice,
thing is, at the same time, there's a
the
money
argument
to be
doesn't
made
matter. The
along the process.
practice has already, or I guess you could even say the praxis of it. Um,
Some absolute
some
praxis.
fucking, it's just some total praxis going on with this shit. But yeah, Breadpanes. The real point of this is Breadpanes, like a lot of people who say they're communists, doing what they criticize other people for doing. And of course, this didn't work out too well, I guess, for the fucking guy for Breadpanes because that just makes Breadpanes a laughingstock. I mean, any of you could go through any of Breadpanes' comics,
But
and they don't
where's
even
the
really have
Amogus?
punchlines to them.
Who's making the Bread Pains Amogus
Yeah,
edits?
yeah, exactly. Who's accidentally fucking. That's one thing you don't see with bread pains either. Is you don't see people
Nobody cares.
being like, "We're gonna meme on bread pains." Instead, it's just nothing, just absolutely nothing. And I think that reminds me of a really old post about the Roman Empire was the most damaging and destructive thing they could do to a people that they conquered was to just ignore them. And it's
Yeah.
like there's revolts and they're rebelling, and then the Romans would just ignore it, and fucking nothing would happen,
Well, they would
and the
spawn
whole
in
thing just
whatever the
imploded.
fucking
The
revolt
rebellions
was,
would just
and then they
implode.
just fucking be like, okay, now don't do that anymore, and that was it.
Yeah, and it was like demoralizing how they fucking didn't even get hate. in response. And that's kind of what ultimately happens with Breadpanes here is that Breadpanes is wants desperately to instigate in any way or be like I'm speaking truth to power, and instead people are just like nah, who cares? Um,
Desperately craving the attention that fucking Stone Toss gets. And Stone Toss himself, he doesn't even really deserve half of that attention. But the simple fact is that people get so angry,
yeah,
they platform him.
but it goes to show also that it's really that easy. If you just make any political point in like 3 or 4 panels, if you make it concisely enough that it's impossible to ignore. Like even this still has too much text on it in a way. It's wordy. It's wall of text, and it also doesn't really fit Twitter's formatting because it's too tall. I don't know why Twitter started doing that, but Twitter images by default just go too wide. So you want a strip of panels that goes across to really show up properly on Twitter. And that's another thing that Stone Toss nails right away without any fucking effort. But yeah, as far as Stone Toss's actual comics, I don't even think they're fucking the best. It's clearly not the best comic. One thing though about Breadpanes I was gonna talk about, we have as usual, in every episode and every video we ever do, we have about 500 things to say simultaneously. So sometimes we're going to miss some. Sometimes we have to say them all at the same time. But in this one, in this particular comic, again, aside from the fact that there's no punchline and that this guy doesn't do punchlines, he does still get a lot of attention because all the leftist people are saying this is our Stone Toss, so we have to like and retweet, even if it's not funny, even if it's not interesting. It's I fucking not to bring this up even too immediately, but the Tom McDonald effect, or like Steven Crowder, where they're not talented even remotely, but they're our guy. They support our side, so we'll support them. That's where all we called that the questionable content effect, like 5 or 6 years ago, where if you don't have to be good at all, but if you appeal to one market and corner it, you'll get the support from it. If you get $1 from every coffee shop Portland hipster, you'll be rich and you'll have a ton of support and money and
You won't ever,
backers and
as
supporters
they
and
say,
readers and all that
you
shit.
won't ever work a day in your life.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is that you're basically only getting support from people who don't really have anything. They don't think, they don't have anything to say. They can only spare the $1, and they're not smart. You can appeal to basically the dumbest, what they refer to as
Especially
the lowest common
coffee shop
denominator.
hipsters.
That's what this is. Like you look at this right here, it has over 700 retweets. That's pretty big. It's doing numbers, but the thing is that it's like based on what? It's based on the fact that leftists are like, this is our Stone Toss, so we have to support it. What if it sucks? Well, we have to support it anyways because it's our Stone Toss. Um, but anyways, and that's not even getting into the weird art, of course, that the art is ugly and wonky. I don't even know if Breadpanes has done. I haven't seen a single new Breadpanes comic by anyone, even replying to it negatively, since May. So again, it's like a fucking over an entire month of nobody even really giving a shit about Breadpanes anymore.
Another good example of how Stone Toss succeeded
Yeah,
by just keeping on, keeping on.
and again, Stone Toss's comic, not even the. I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, Stone Toss's comic is the best. Every single one
That's
is it."
just
But
because it's
most of them
popular.
are just like straightforward. At least to the extent that a lot of newspaper political cartoons will have some kind of joke and a punchline in it. Um, so that's all it takes, and a lot of people simply have that routine to settle into is just once a week make a comic like this that's 3 to 4 panels at most usually, and just fire it out once a week. Make it have a joke, make it have some kind of political statement about it, and that's it. That's all. That's all you need. It's the bare minimum, and Stone Toss meets the bare minimum, and that's it. That's all he has to do. Um, and to the point where even other leftists were like, "Oh, this one actually makes up the point really well, even though I hate it and I hate him and that kind of stuff." And so it's
The
got he's
Nazi, but
just
he's right.
competent. He's
And
so
it's like,
competent
why are you
that
calling
people
him a
praise
Nazi
him.
then? It seems like the biggest mistake ever. Like, why fall into that trap?
Yeah, they shouldn't have done that. Um, so, anyways, figured I would just go over that. Well, I figured I would just go over Breadpanes, like George Alexopoulos versus Breadpanes, and it's like, please, you're both terrible. But again,
You
the
know, it's
fucking
a
George
fucking
Alexopoulos thing, I wouldn't care otherwise.
it's a cripple fight.
His comics would just be acceptable and fine to me, but he blocked me because I was friends with somebody who said "pity party of one" to him, and that was way too much for him. The thing is, that's too much for a lot of people. I could list off tons of people in comics who block people for even less than that, which is incredibly effeminate. Or people who have had giant public meltdowns, crying fits like little babies over just being made fun of. Way more popular people than George himself, even. That we personally have been responsible for driving people to crying fits for days after we had already moved on, forgotten about them, and all that kind of shit. The comic we did about Lunar Baboon, that guy fucking did an actual comic in response to our fucking comic in which he was trying to act like he was gloating about how angry he was and how upset he was, and then of course tried to get his fans to sick his fans on us, which of course didn't work because you know there's only when you get mad about somebody reviewing your comic or making fun of your comic, all you really do is reveal how thin-skinned you are, which we do better than anyone. We're pretty much the best people in the history of the entire internet at making others reveal how thin-skinned they are, because we've even done this to some of the biggest YouTubers in history, um, to this day, even
So
to the
yeah,
point
definitely
where even
people
their
that their
friends,
followings.
like their friends, were coming to us and being like, "Yeah, you completely drove them up the fucking wall and got under their skin." And it's like, shit, man, you like fucking you again. Who would know better than their own close personal friends? And they're coming to us and saying that we fucking drove them up the wall. So again, that's that when we say nobody's better than us, that's not my opinion. It's not even my statement. It's other people's statements about us.
It's not ego or vanity.
And people who don't even agree with each other or know each other have agreed with that, have come to that conclusion independently without any intent to. They fucking have said it. So again, it's basically it's well, like you once pointed out to someone we know, the plural of anecdote is data, which is true, objectively. And again, we don't quantify this. Other people quantify it for us and point out that we were right all along. But anyways, I want to move on to one extra little thing for this week was, again, from May 25th. So this goes pretty far back. Was the Golden Smurf, who is a really good artist, does his own webcomic, which I think we plugged before. It's called, was it Ramia? Yeah,
Yeah,
no.
Ramia. Yeah, I know we fucking.
Yeah,
I
that
know we've
guy.
covered it. I
Who
know we
does
covered it
this
because it's
super
pretty.
super short stacked super stack. She should just be called a super stack at this point.
It's called Super Stack.
But he actually did a tweet pointing at remembering this old comic that we used to make fun of way back in the days of Shitty Webcomics many years ago, from Short Pact. by Dave Dick Grasper Willis, who eventually went on to do very awkward, uncomfortable pornography with this exact style. But so, the Golden Smurf, who's a good artist, pointed out this, saying, saw this comic on the left years ago. I remember being disappointed when I noticed later that it was just an edit and the original was super boring and unfunny. Again, I've got another comic creator pointing out that a very good artist and comic creator pointing out that Short Packed is very boring and unfunny. In fact, here we'll start with this one where
I
it's
mean, a good point.
the of this was such a fucking huge disaster for Dave Willis, by the way, because this guy this guy who pops up in this first thing was accurately called a straw man. He was called a straw man argument, and he was a straw man,
Absolutely a straw man.
which was accurate. It was
Definition of a
true. It
straw
was
man.
completely observably true. Is that this guy was a character that appears out of nowhere to present a straw man argument, in essence, a false version of an argument, a misrepresentation of arguments that other people have brought up. So that in comic form, the ex KCD guy did this. Randall Monroe has also done this in the past. Linkara has done this in the past. A lot of people from the exact same fucking political mindset have all done these kinds of comics. And in fact, Breadpanes, of course, was just another example. That's why I grouped these all in together. But anyway, so straw man guy comes up is like, I'm tired of you griping chicks in comics are sexually objectified. The dudes are too. And so she's like, oh yeah, what about this? And draws Batman as like kawaii Batman. And the
It's like a
straw
pink
man
sheet.
guy, of course, goes, oh, this makes me feel uncomfortable. And she's, welcome to the
Something
background radiation
no
of my
man has
life.
ever said. Never.
Yeah, again, it's one of those things that adventures are something nobody's ever said to the point where a lot of these other people who would agree with this comic then go to accurate representations of an argument and say nobody's ever said that to directly to things that people have said. Like it's like nobody's ever said that the left wants to molest children, and then here's a leftist who wants to molest children, and other leftists who support them and are like, oh, stuff that Vaush said, and then people are like, oh, nobody ever said that, and then video clip of Vaush actually saying it, that kind of shit, or Destiny, or other stupid YouTuber fucking
E-celeb cancer.
debaters.
More e-celeb cancer.
Yeah, exactly. Primarily leftists tend to resort to making straw man arguments and then replying or finding other arguments that are accurate representations and trying to accuse them of being straw man arguments when they're not. So that's extremely reliable. It's mathematically reliable to the point where we could have named a rule about it, and we still could. Just another one of the many, many shitty
Yeah, in
webcomic
particular,
rules
it's
that we've
like when a
established years
straw
ago.
man, when you come up with a straw man for something that no one has ever said, there's straw manning, and then there's that. It's actually even worse than just a straw man.
Yeah,
Even a straw man is usually trying to represent an existing argument that's just like fucking badly placed.
and
This
totally
is
dumb.
worse.
But
It's
anyways,
shitty.
the edit here ends with some kind of JoJo reference. I forgot to put in the pixel smug again, or whatever. Anyways, ends with some kind of JoJo reference. His expectation is to become a gangster star, and the straw man is now smiling and saying that looks cool. And she says, "Stop contradicting my straw man." And then I fucking replied to this with some other edits. I point out he had a total meltdown when the original comic was called a strawman argument and did several response comics trying to make fun of people who call his strawman arguments. It didn't work out very well for him though. Smirk. And then here's another one where that same character shows up and is like, "Oh, I can't believe it got strawman. This pizza is a total strawman. Fuck this strawman pizza." And Of course, it's very reminiscent of the I don't think that you keep saying that word. I don't think it means what you think it means. Whenever somebody says that, 99% of the chance it's somebody is using a word properly and somebody's just angry that it disproves their point. Um, but then just overall, the dialogue is just fucking text saying a straw man comic by Dave Willis trying to claim that Dave Willis doesn't make straw man comics. Um,
He doesn't make the comics that he makes,
yeah.
in other words.
And then another one where, again, same character shows up, says, "What do you think of this? I found a drawing a guy with his shirt off." And then he holds up the phone. It says, "Awaken my masters," more JoJo stuff. And then at the last panel is just from JoJo saying, "Your next line will be, I was only pretending to be retarded." And again, wonderful classic stuff. Fucking El Chaparro, who follows me, says, "I thought it was a chick doing those web comics." Nope, just good old Dave Dick Grasper Willis. Um, Somebody else
Great.
points out, God, these comics are always too wordy. Who even says, "Welcome to the background radiation of my life." Lol. Lol. Um,
Yeah, only a gigantic, pretentious fucking faggot nerd.
hmm Somebody else points out that there was a continuation of it, but they posted the original, of course, when I posted a bunch of the edits and stuff, which I think he saw. Whatever, though. I just want to point out those because, again, those are good representations, and then cap off with just one quick return to Breadpanes because, again, this is yet another example. This is pretty much the sum up of Breadpanes, where it's like, "Hi, I'm Charlie. I identify with they them," and of course it's MAGA chud, who's like they means people of multiple she or she, and then actually
True.
singular they, and then fucking one of the other guys goes, "Hey, who left their bag here?" And as if to say, "Huh, get it? See, doesn't that prove my point?" But again, there is no punchline. It's just another comic that's trying to make some kind of political argument without a punchline, without being funny, and without even, again, another straw man comic where it's like, we're straw man the mega chuds or whatever. And it's like,
But at
who
the same time,
cares?
just going way past the point of the argument because they know they can't actually face up to the actual argument, which is that they there is not a personality, it's not an identity.
Somebody else fucking replies this funny in the comments. "I feel like you add pointless panels from time to time." Now, here's the thing: this does make the comic more concise and fits better to Twitter's dumb cropping, but at the same time, it still ends with something that doesn't have a punchline. It's not funny. It's not really interesting, and not
Definitely not
it's
it.
not really smart or clever the way that at least Stone Toss clearly thinks about the point he's trying to make and how to make some kind of joke or at least a concise statement. If it's not a joke, then it's usually like a one panel um, comic that just makes a clear and concise statement. Usually still has some element of trying to make a joke in it too. um, so yeah, that's a lot of these the attempts at political comics. We've already covered Stone Toss. Not as a shitty comic, but I mean, it's not even a comic I'm a fan of. But it's not a comic that I'm like, "Oh, it's politics. It just gets into me." I don't. I'm not fucking
I
bothered by
see it
Stone. I've liked
regularly
some of his
enough.
comics in general.
It's something that you'll see just on its own often enough that
Hmm.
if it really bothers you, it's something to do with your own fault.
Stone Toss knows what he's doing. That's the thing, and he deserves credit for that absolutely. Whereas Breadpanes obviously has no clue what Zier are doing. Um, so it's fucking the same way that Dave Willis was just angrily making a vent comic about how angry he is about really about losing an argument, especially because I remember the comments in the Strawman comics were people arguing with him, and he was constantly losing, and he would start banning and deleting comments because he was getting his fucking ass kicked in the comments first fucking short packed, which also we dubbed straw packed as a result because of that. Yeah, again, that just backfired not very well for Dave Dick Grasper.
Turned out quite bad.
Yeah, anyways, I figured we would actually wrap up real quick with the recommended good comic of the week, which really just a comic that I'd recommend. This one's a fucking um, it's described here. This is pretty much the only page I can really show is the archive page. A warmly pornographic fantasy saga. A lot of really nice art, very painterly art, and yeah, there's a lot of sex and porn. Um, it's just irovedout.com. Um, and you can check it out. You can just skim it if you feel like it, just to see what
I
you
ended
even
up
think about it.
binging
But
like 200 pages all
I
day.
always really liked the artist and the art for this in
There's an actual
general.
story for it, so it's like that's always a good idea. It's one of the big strengths of a lot of fucking comics being made by independent creators nowadays who aren't trying to either pretend to be indie and then join, say, a group called Dynamite or other
Yeah,
fucking.
a lot of people claiming to be indies while they were actually working with a company. You're not a fucking indie if you're working with a company. It's just
So
the
those
fucking
exact
definition of a
same
fucking
people,
indie.
those are the exact same types of indies who will be like, "Oh, I don't think that the writer should get any credit for a comic because who
Yeah.
cares? You know how long it took me to draw these pages?"
It only takes like a couple minutes to write a comic, but it takes and it's like, yeah, but your writing sucks. That's so there's a lot of that
They're
with
not
those
even right.
people.
You look at these people, auteur-driven
Hmm.
fucking comics for cape shit and shit like that. They're fucking unreadable because they're not written at
They're
all. It's just literally a
identical.
sequence of bullshit.
Every single auteur superhero comic is identical to the most stiff, generic, bog standard fucking corporate cape shit put out by Marvel or DC.
Well, and also typical Hollywood dog shit.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be the house of ideas.
Well,
They
they
have
usually
no
don't even
idea.
write to formula as well as Holly Weird does. Um, anyways, this
But
comic though,
I think this one's written by the artist too, but they
yeah,
actually fucking clearly at least came up with ideas.
yeah.
There's actual writing and concepts being presented here as opposed to just fucking okay, now they punch each other. So Spider-Man kicked this guy, it's so dope.
But even without that, it's like there's just some nice visuals. There's some good art to look at if that's all,
It's
and
at
it's
least
very
because the
easy
key
on the
point
eyes, of
here
course.
is that it's a fucking purpose to go from one scene to the other.
Mm.
There's a reason for things to be happening.
Kind of
It's
reminds me of
something that
Alfie in
I'll
that sense, which
automatically
I don't
put
think we ever covered yet.
head and shoulders above Jawbreakers.
Yeah, well, yeah, easily because Jawbreakers didn't have a plot. People pretend that it did, but it didn't
But I mean,
because they
Jawbreakers
don't
has
know.
no excuse. Jawbreakers is supposed to be a story, and it
Yeah,
doesn't have one.
it just had a series of visuals that carried no meaning. Anyways, but here, I roved out in search of truth and love. I think I can actually show this, because it's her back. Alexis Flower, though, is a good artist, good looking stuff, and some thickica. That's always nice. So yeah, check out these things. Check out comics, and make sure to tell everyone that Shitty Webcomics is back reviewing webcomics. Donate to our Subscribe Star to get access to all the secret videos and or support us. You can suggest a webcomic on our Curious Cat, though. We have a big pile of comics already, linked and written down at least. Like, share, recomment, unhit the bell, and should have listened to Shitty Webcomics.